Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are working on the Jeep. Let me show you what we're doing and why we are doing it. Also, if you want to avoid moments like these, watch this video to learn from my mistakes and do it right the first time. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Jeep and BMW content. So if we look under the Jeep, and this will probably be the same for most people who wheel their Jeeps and have the stock skid plates, these are really bent up. You can see how actually damaged it is. All of this should be flat, but no, it is caved in very nicely. This Jeep definitely gets wheeled. And then I even had to extend this one out a little bit because of exhaust clearance. So when you're wheeling and you're sliding on a rock right here, it gets caught on everything. So today we are going to be upgrading our skid plates. Along with doing that, I will have to modify my exhaust. So we are also going to be doing an exhaust comparison, but that will be another video. This video won't include the gas tank skid plate, but looking at how damaged it is, I might just order myself one because it is really damaged. But so far it's just going to be the transfer case skid plate and the oil pan and transmission pan skid plate. And then on top of that, a new cross member. So let's take a look at what we got. So we have the Smitty built transfer case skid plate. This is a rough country cross member. And again, the Smitty built transmission and oil pan skid plate. I ended up going Smitty built. I love Metal Cloak, and a couple other brands have good looking skid plates, but for the price, you really can't beat this. It is 3/16 inch thick steel. It's already comes powder coated. And like I said, for the price, you really can't beat it. I will post links to where I bought this from. Amazon actually had the cheapest price that I was able to find, so I had it shipped easily to my house. So let's go ahead with removing the other skid plate, or the other cross member, and all the other skid plates. Be sure to jack up the back of the transmission or the transfer case, that way it does not try to come down on you. So let's get started. You can start with the transfer case skid plate. You can remove that without having to hold up the actual transmission or transfer case. But be careful, it is heavy when you're lowering it down. It is an 18 millimeter socket that you need, but with wheeling, you'll likely have to use a 19 millimeter just to actually get the socket over the bolts. Now that I've got that transfer case skid plate out of there, we need to jack up on the back of the transfer case. That way we can remove the cross member. Now we can remove the cross member bolts. Again, these are 18 millimeters. Start with the fuel skid plate bolts. There are nuts on the back side here. I have no rust in Arizona, so I could actually use my hand once I spin the bolt to take them off. But it is a 18 millimeter wrench you could shove back here to hold the back side of the nuts. And then you'll have to remove your transfer case bolts out of the cross member. Mine's a little different because I've got the Hemi swap, so I will remove different bolts than what you would do. So here's the Jeep factory cross member compared to the rough country one. Just look how dented in everything is. Here's the stock transfer case skid plate, and this is the new aftermarket one. Just has a lot more coverage, a lot more protection. And look how thin this metal is compared to the 1/4 inch thick metal of the new cross member. Time for replacement. It's rough looking. I'll have to weld on this plate, or you can bolt it on, but weld on this plate for the V8 transmission, but that will be easy. And then we'll get it put back together. So because of how bad this gas tank skid plate is bent up, I'm actually going to be removing it. I'm going to take a big sledgehammer and see if I can get it straightened out more, and then I'll see if I can find some metal to thicken this bottom part up, strengthen it all up. The best way to do this, loosen some of these bolts. You have to slip a strap under the front of the actual gas tank. You got it bolted right to here, or hooked onto here, and put a little bit of pressure to lift up the gas tank while you loosen up some of the bolts towards the front. Loosen up this bolt, the front bolts, and then you can start to lower the skid plate. So you can see here, you got the skid plate lowered. Don't put a lot of pressure against the plastic gas tank. And then next, I have it's a sink cleaner, but I'm using it to fish the wire through the middle of the gas tank. And it's coming out right here. So then I can attach another ratchet strap to it. That way the ratchet strap can be in the middle of the gas tank and hold the gas tank up against the Jeep while I lower the actual skid plate. This is a good reason to always have like 1 or 2 bolts left in it, because when it kind of breaks free, it comes down. And luckily I have the gas tank actually up there, so it's not really a lot of weight of this, but I had 1 bolt in there and it, you know, holds it good. So now we get our little transmission jack, so we can take the other bolt out and lower the whole thing down. Gas tank is out. Good time to clean it all up. If you live in a salty, snowy area, put a fresh coat of paint on it. So the plan is to take this sledgehammer and hammer it nice and flat, and then weld these plates onto here. Give it some more strength. So let's the cross member is in, and then we will test fit the gas tank. So here's the bottom of the skid plate. I have 3/16 inch steel. I'm going to weld onto it. Just going to add some extra strength, keep it from kind of getting hit and bending in as much. So just going to be, I'm going to do more welds than that, but just going to weld this whole thing up just to add some strength. I've seen some of the aftermarket skid plates, and I've seen them, they kind of, I feel like you lose a little bit of ground clearance with those. We will do this and see how it goes. Can't be any worse than it was. And then we will get to installing these guys. Alright, so here is the finished gas tank skid plate. The goal is to just add more support for if I hit rocks, it's not, bending up so bad. This is the cheap man's option. Either way, even if I bought a different skid plate for it, I would still have to remove this original factory one and use a sledgehammer and hit all the dents out of it. So this to me was the better option without losing any ground clearance, just adding a little bit of strength to it. So we will see if it works. Alright, I have the gas tank skid plate in here. This will bolt up nicely. we got the rough country cross member in. It'll look a little different because there's a V8 under here. So now let's put the transfer case skid plate on and see how that lines up. Alright, I got the transfer case skid plate on. It's nice and flat, nice and flush. This will get brought up closer. So now let's get the transmission skid plate on here. Alright, so here is the transfer case skid plate. And here is the transmission skid plate. Normally you'd have the transmission skid plate being on top of the transfer case skid plate. With this Hemi swap, the transfer case is really close to these skid plates. So I need to put a little bit of a spacer in between the transmission mount. So then I had to put the transfer case skid plate on top of the transmission skid plate to space it out a little bit more. But it's not that bad. This little bit of overlap. If I start catching on things, then I'll swap it out. On top of this, I had to redesign the exhaust a little bit, but I also wanted to do it to get this flow master in here. I need to make a mount that'll go from here to the motor mounts. Just going to use some tubing from the original skid plate that was used for the transfer case. And I'll show you guys that. Alright, back onto the Jeep again. This install is almost done. I did end up changing my cross member. I had the rough country one before, but I didn't like that I had to hold the little nuts on the back side. It would have made it a little bit difficult, you know, some of these center ones with the actual transmission and everything. So I ended up going with a Barnes 4-wheel drive cross member, because it has all the original factory location nuts welded in. So, and they also have these crushed tubes on the inside here, like the factory ones, just thicker. Only difference is you had to paint it. I will post a link to that cross member also. And then while I was ordering from Barnes, I got these little bolt savers. But let's look at our front. Here's that bracket that I had to make to go up to the motor mount and then come down to the skid plate. I just need to finish making the other side, and this install will be close to finished. I only needed to make these brackets because I've got the V8 swap, so my motor mounts are not the same. If you didn't have the V8 swap, you would be able to use the factory brackets. But really, if you got the V8 swap, I would still recommend these skid plates. Just make these front brackets, really not that hard. But overall, I would say I'm pretty impressed with these skid plates.